Hi, everyone. Welcome to the fourth webinar in our Navigating BOMA Best webinar series. In this webinar, we will cover the accessibility and wellness and resilience and site focus areas. My name is Ray Su, and I'm from the BOMA Best team here at BOMA Canada. And the speakers joining us today are Corinne Schoenwill, Sustainability Consultant at Morrison Hershfield, and Ray Dumichel, BOMA Best Verification Professional, RKD Planning and Consulting Services. Before we get started, I would like to just read our land acknowledgement. BOMA Canada would like to acknowledge that its office is located in Toronto and on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Before I hand it over to our speakers, I'd like to start off with a quick overview on BOMA Best 4.0. The BOMA Best Sustainable Program is a certification program and management tool that provides a roadmap on decarbonization, waste and water reduction, retrofit for accessibility, and navigating climate risk, and more. It is designed to be a practical approach to improving sustainability in building operations and management. BEST 4.0 launched in April 2023, and changes to the BOMA Best program were made based on feedback and input from users, stakeholders, and industry representatives. BOMA Best aims to push the commercial real estate industry forward and keep up with important sustainability trends. And we also launched the BOMA Best Hub, an online platform and tool that to complete BOMA Best assessment, track certifications, report on building and portfolio performance. All asset classes are eligible for BOMA Best. Buildings are eligible for a specific asset class if more than 75% of the building is the associated building use and meets minimum floor area requirements. The universal asset class is available for any building types that are not categorized here, from aquariums to zoos and anything in between. BOMA Best does not certify new construction. A building must be in operation for a minimum of 12 months to be eligible for BOMA Best certification. Details on our asset classes can be found on our BOMA Best website. BOMA Best 4.0 now includes six areas of assessment called focus areas, compared to 10 in the previous 3.0 version. The new focus areas include topics such as decarbonization, equity and inclusion, enhanced engagement, and resilience. BOMA Best 4.0 also has a reduced number of baseline practice questions, down from 16 to 12, are mandatory minimum requirement questions necessary for any level of certification. These 12 best practices are listed here, and these are the best practice questions related to each of those six focus areas in the 4.0 version. BOMA Best 4.0 still has 5 certification levels. Achieving a level is dependent on the score achieved after a verification is completed. The score thresholds for each level are listed here. Key point, regardless of level achieved, the baseline practice questions must be answered with supporting documentation uploaded to the application. So now I'll hand it over to Corinne and Ray for details on accessibility and resilience.
Okay, thank you so much, Ray. So yeah, as you said, today we're going to go over 2 focus areas. So we're going to go over the accessibility and wellness focus area and the resilience and site focus area. So my name is Corinne. I'm a sustainability consultant at Morrison Hershfield, now Stantec. I'm proud to be a member of the sustainability team here at Morrison Hershfield, and I'm one of over a dozen full-time sustainability consultants that work to help buildings teams across Canada pursue green certifications of all kinds. Our team's pretty special because it has the ability to provide extra support through in-house specialized services, which that a lot of the green rating systems require, which include IEQ testing, energy modeling, energy and water assessments, and climate risk assessments. Our team has worked to successfully certify hundreds of buildings under various green rating systems, and we've experienced certifying under all versions of BOMA Best. Throughout this presentation, I'm hoping I can provide some extra guidance on BOMA Best version 4, as well as use our experience to provide some extra insights onto the rating system. So today I'll go over kind of an overview of both the focus areas, kind of show you what's new to this version of BOMA Best, kind of describe some of the services that might be required, and also show you when you can kind of use your older documentation if you're recertifying your building. Just a heads up, we will be focusing on the sustainable buildings rating system and specifically the asset classes of offices. At the end of each section, I'm going to pass it to Ray to give some great insights from a BOMA verifier's perspective. So we'll start with accessibility and wellness. So I'll just start with an overview, kind of go over some of the credits and some of the things you might see, and then end with the training and innovation section. So a lot of users get a little bit confused why accessibility and wellness is included within the sustainable buildings umbrella. So I think one thing that's really important to know is that sustainability is an umbrella term. So it has a lot of different things underneath it. You can't, when you think sustainability, you may think of the environmental concerns and how it's affecting the environment, but you can't have environmental sustainability without also having social sustainability. Occupant experience is really important part of sustainability. You can have the most amazing sustainable building, but if occupants can't function in those spaces well and aren't comfortable in those spaces, it isn't designed for everyone who's supposed to use it. Accessibility is a really great way that create spaces that work for all kinds of people and abilities. And occupant wellness and occupant comfort is just a really great way of making sure occupants feel comfortable in a space, are productive, it boosts their overall mood, and it also encourages occupants to become engaged with their building and participate in building performance, which can ultimately boost the overall performance of a building. Also, occupants who like their spaces are more likely to take care of it, so they'll take care of the building and want to be in that building more. So an overview moving from BOMA Best version 3 to BOMA Best version 4. So in BOMA Best version 3, the categories that created this new category were called comfort and health and wellness, and there were 2 best practices that were associated with these focus areas. Moving into BOMA Best version 4, we now see 2 baseline practices and 14 questions, and there's also the addition of accessibility. So like we're seeing in some of the other focus areas, there's still that streamlining to make it a little bit more user-friendly, but then we're also including some more things that BOMA Best is seeing as kind of important to sustainability. So as I said previously, accessibility is a really important part of sustainability, and I believe that BOMA Best is really bringing it to the forefront by emphasizing its important and intrinsic connection to sustainability. So a new baseline practice for version 4 are these really great questionnaires that BOMA Best have developed. So for the accessibility and wellness category, one of the baseline practices is this accessibility awareness form. So this form walks you through the accessibility measures that you have at your building. Keep in mind that this is not a checklist of all the things that you need to have implemented in your building to be able to get BOMA Best certification. Think of it more like a survey, just showing you what you already have at your building. It's a great way for users to become a little bit more aware of what accessibility measures are already in place at their building, and also where there might be some possible areas of improvement. Once you go through the survey, anything that you've checked yes on, you provide photos on to meet documentation requirements. So there's a baseline practice and multiple credits that are associated with occupant engagement. Many of these strategies might look familiar from the previous version of BOMA. Occupant engagement can be a great way to improve the overall performance of your building and occupant comfort in the building. So the baseline practice for occupant engagement is to implement an occupant environmental and communication program that's been dated within 12 months of the final submission date that includes 4 communication strategies. So this is very similar to the best practice 16 that was available in the previous version of BOMA. So if you've already created a program for your last certification of BOMA, you can use this plan as a base to just update it and meet the new requirements. I'd like to highlight the fact that in the old requirement, you only required to prove evidence of 2 communication strategies with occupants, whereas in this new baseline practice, you have to provide 4. Additional points are awarded for occupant engagement by doing a couple different other occupant engagement strategies. So the first is to implement an occupant service request program. Once you've implemented that program, if you show that you are responding to these service requests quickly, so within 1 to 2 weeks, you can gain another point. And then you can also gain a point by doing an occupant satisfaction survey. So an occupant satisfaction survey is a really great way to connect with your occupants and see if there might be some kind of weak areas or areas of improvement in your building. So some of the topics you can include in your survey to gain some points under BOMA is air quality, thermal comfort, lighting, acoustics, communication and response times, inclusivity, and the quality and effectiveness of the building management and services. Another thing that's new to BOMA Best version 4 is the Rick Hansen Foundation Accessibility Certification. So the Rick Hansen Foundation is a nonprofit that encourages buildings to have more accessibility measures within their building. So the Rick Hansen Foundation survey is an on-site review that measures the level of meaningful access of a building and site. From a BOMA contest, there's kind of different levels that you can engage with the Rick Hansen Foundation to get some points. So the first is to just get a professional to conduct a site review from the Rick Hansen Foundation. So they will go through your site, identify some of your accessibility measures, as well as provide you with some feedback of some areas of improvement. The next step is to then you can make a plan of some of these actions to address the shortcomings within your building. To get even further points, you can then start to implement those measures within your building. The highest achievement within the Rick Hansen Foundation for BOMA Best would be to actually get a Rick Hansen Foundation Accessibility Certification for your building. They have two levels, the baseline certification and gold. So a great way to get to that point is to follow all those previous steps, implement your measures, and then they will provide you with a certification if you meet their accessibility standards. Points are awarded in this focus area also for improving occupant comfort. So I like to think of occupant comfort as kind of coming from two different areas. There's kind of an operational side to occupant comfort, and then there's also an architectural design side. On the operational side, there's humidification and relative humidity. So it's really important to properly humidify your spaces so that occupants aren't feeling like the air is too dry or too humid. And it's largely based on outdoor conditions. So in Canada, we have very dry winters, fairly humid summers. So we need to be accounting for that to make sure our spaces are conditioned properly and occupants feel comfortable in the space. On the architectural side, there's visual elements and acoustics. So the visual elements can be including features like having quality views. So making sure windows are looking out onto trees, natural elements, so occupants can get great views. Also providing natural light, maybe locating your offices by your windows. Also, and then if you can't do that, then providing good electric light. So make sure that it's not flickering. You're considering the color of lighting you're providing, the intensity of the lighting. And then also, since most of us work on computers in this modern world, considering glare control devices to make sure occupants can use all their devices in their space well. On the acoustic side, it's all about controlling noise levels in your space. So consider what are the uses of the space, what acoustics might be interfering with each other, mitigating external noises like things from like traffic and mechanical equipment, maybe soundproofing conference rooms. So diversity, equity, and inclusivity, or DEI. So BOMA awards points for addressing having DEI aspects within your building. So the first step for looking at this is to provide an in-house assessment of the DEI aspects within your building. So this is just an in-house assessment. Take a look at what kind of features you already have in your building that promotes diversity, equity, and inclusivity. The next step would be to engage a third-party DEI expert. They will be able to provide you with more detailed information and advice of your building and how you can improve. The last step would then to be enhance the DEI aspects within your building based on their feedback. Some of the inclusive amenities that you may already have in place in your building that will get you some points within BOMA are things like inclusive washrooms, so universal washrooms, family washrooms, gender neutral washrooms, prayer, meditative, or restorative rooms, or like wellness rooms, on-site childcare, outdoor areas of respite, or you can also get points for providing DI training to tenants or employees. Another component of DEI is creating a sense of place. So this is using inclusive amenities to improve how occupants feel on a space versus improve how they can use the space. So some features that will enhance your space and create a sense of place within your building are things like ancestral land acknowledgements, historical community acknowledgements, public art or art by local indigenous artists, conservation of heritage features at your building, outdoor publicly accessible and safe amenities, hosting events to celebrate location and connection to community, or installations of permanent displays recognizing the local geography or environment of the place. The last section of this focus area is the training and innovation. This is very similar to other focus categories. So it includes eligible training topics that you can train your staff on, or innovations points for areas that go above and beyond the basic BOMA scope. So eligible training topics for this focus area is accessibility and equity, comfort, views and acoustics, and occupant experience. On the innovation side, the only one available for offices is the other category. So what that is you can look at your building, think, okay, what wellness and inclusivity and diversity elements do we have in place that goes above and beyond the BOMA scope? If you find something that you think qualifies under that, you can then apply for an innovation credit under this section. I'm now going to pass it to Ray to give some great insights as a BOMA verifier.
Thank you, Corinne, and thank you for the great information. What I've done here is, as a BOMA Best Verifier professional, I've picked some of the questions that are new in version 4.0, so hopefully we'll be able to help you out. So the first one that I've picked here is, have steps been taken to address any shortcomings identified in the Rick Hansen Foundation Accessibility Certification? So some of the question requirements that we're looking for here is to provide proof of steps taken following the on-site visit to show how accessibility shortcomings are being addressed. This may be in a form or plan or actual progress made in addressing shortcoming identified. And some of the areas that we are looking for are to provide demonstration and documentation of a plan of action and timeline, and photos of corrective action taken. The next question that I've put in here is, have the building features been evaluated against the diversity, equity, inclusion aspect to inform an implementation plan? So some of the requirements that we're looking for here is to conduct an assessment that considers a variety of DEI strategies and feasibility of implementation, engage a third-party DEI expert to consider in-house assessments and help in the development of a building-specific DEI strategy. Develop a long-term DEI implementation plan on the building-specific DEI strategies identified in the in-house assessment and through consultation with the DEI expert. And some of the things that the BOMA Best Verification professional is looking for is that we will review documentation of the initiatives, review documentation of the impact, and we will look at the long-term DEI implementation plan. The next question that I have here in this section is, did the building operation and management team receive accessibility and wellness training in the previous 3 years? Some of the requirements are a list of names of all the staff members who've been whom the competency covered under these topics would apply, provide the applicable course outline, and provide evidence of competency or training received, such as credential, completion certificates, and record of attendance. What we are looking for is to provide demonstration and documentation on course outline and provide proof of certificate and or similar materials. I'll hand it back to Corinne.
Thank you. Okay, so our next focus area is resilience and site. So again, I'll give an overview, go over some of the credits and components within this category, and we'll end again with the training and innovation section. So this credit actually this focus area had a lot of changes from version 3 to version 4. So in version 3, it was called Site, and there was 26 questions associated with it. Going into version 4, we now have 2 baseline practices, so that's new. There's new requirements for the focus area, 10 questions, and it adds climate hazards and resilience strategies. So it made a shift from focusing on kind of present conditions within the site to now looking at present and future conditions for the site. Similarly to the accessibility baseline practice, there's also a form that is filled out for one of the climate hazard baseline practices. So it's looking at past climate hazards. So this form will walk you through the past climate hazards at the building. So the form highlights common climate hazards that affect many different buildings and encourages the users to consider the climate effects on their specific building. So this is what the form looks like. It allows you to pick a level of impact for each category, for each climate hazard, gives a little bit of a description, and then also allows you to see how often it happens at your building in the past 5 years, and you can make notes on how it impacted your building and what measures were implemented, if applicable, to recover from these events. So some of the hazards that are included in the form are power outages, extreme heat events, wildfires, storms and flooding, drought, earthquakes, and poor air quality. So from the site category from BOMA Best version 3, still some of the components are coming into version 4, and many of them are found within this kind of subcategory, site management. So it's organized into 2 sections, site irrigation and sensitive site management. On the site irrigation side, the question looks at what landscaping is on the project site and how it's irrigated. Points are then earned if water efficient irrigation controls are used on the site. So this could include things like root fed irrigation, rain or soil moisture sensors, weather-based controllers, smart scheduling, other water efficient measures like that. If there are no landscaping on the project, then you can set this credit to not applicable. On the sensitive site management side, it's looking at what environmentally sensitive strategies are in place at the building. So some that you may or may not have in the building are native plant species, encouraging native pollinators to come to your site, edible gardens, beehives, or bird safe sites. So that could be measures like adding special bird safe stickers to your windows to prevent birds from hitting the windows. One of the main services within this focus area is a building-specific climate assessment. So it's a third-party assessment that looks at what specific climate risks affect a building. And it looks at the past, present, and future risks for a building. This is not a required service, but it is one that if you do complete it, you can provide the documentation for many questions within BOMA Best version 4 within this category. So it's one I really recommend you to take a look at if you're looking to start a new project or recertify your project. It also is just a really great way to inform you more about your building. So some of the outcomes that you get from performing a building specific climate assessment is first you get your climate risk identification. So which specific climate risks are going to affect your building. Then the professional ranks those climate risks based on likelihood and severity. It looks at your current resilience strategies in place on the building. And then based on the climate risks that they identified, it will give you future improvements and suggestions of how you can make your building more resilient for the future. Again, not a required service, but it is a really great way to learn more about your building and pick up some points with BOMA. Once you've identified your climate hazards, projects are then rewarded for planning and mitigating against these hazards. So the first one is emergency preparedness. So this is a topic that might be very familiar to many of you. You might already have an emergency preparedness plan in place at your building. This was a previous requirement for BOMA Best version 3, but you might need to upgrade your emergency preparedness plan just to include climate hazards, as there's a new focus on these climate hazards. So based on the information you've gained possibly from your climate assessment, if you chose to do that service, you can then update your climate preparedness plan to include some of these possible climate hazards. Next is to look at your critical systems and how you're going to maintain these critical systems in case of an event. So you can look at how your building functions and what systems are absolutely critical to the function of that building. So if you are in a building perhaps where you can't have any power, you can never lose power, like that is not okay for the building function, then you need to make a plan of how these systems can be maintained in the case of an extreme event. So power outage and brownouts. Brownouts are becoming increasingly common, so that might be a great system to look at for how we can prevent those. The last is capital planning. So it's putting aside funds to respond and recover from extreme events. So it's looking at how can we improve our building going forward? Can we put budgeting aside so that we can improve our building? And it's also looking at if the extreme event occurs, do we have the funds to be able to recover from those events? The last section, as always, is training and innovation. The only eligible topic for this category is the resilience category. So it's a topic you can train your staff on. But there's a couple different ways you can pick up points in the innovation category. So the first is to use non-potable sources of water for irrigation. So it could be your gray water or rainwater, perhaps. You can also take actions against climate risk hazards that have been identified. So with up until this point within the BOMA scope, you do not have to implement any of the climate risk hazard actions. But if you want to implement those, go above and beyond, you can then pick up a point here in the innovation section. There's another point associated for electric vehicle charging stations at the building. And of course, there's always the other category if you feel your building goes above and beyond the BOMA scope. I'll now pass it back to Ray to give his perspective again.
And thank you, Corinne. I appreciate that. And again, I've picked two questions here that are new in 4.0. So hopefully this will help you out. And the first one is, have a climate risk been ranked and assessed for the building and site? Some of the requirements that we're looking for here is to conduct a climate risk assessment, include information on the relative likelihood of occurrence of each hazard identified and the potential impact. For each high-risk hazard identified, determine the likelihood of occurrence through 2040. Rate and describe potential consequences on the building component identified as vulnerable to the hazard. From this review, you must identify the highest risk based on the most significant consequences for the most likely high-impact relevant hazards, and provide an explanation and description of the data sources methodology used to determine the highest and most important risk facing the building and site. And some of the areas that we're looking for here is the most common demonstration of a report prepared by a third-party consultant. Often it's an engineer, and making sure that the results apply to the site and its activities. The next question I have here is an innovative process or technology in place at the building that goes beyond requirement of outlined in this section? The requirements are to provide details of the technology or process applied at the building, identify when the technology or process was implemented, and the steps that are taken in place to ensure technology processes are ongoing success, and explain how the technology and processes has improved the building's resilience and site management practices for it to be considered innovative. And for the BOMA Best Verified Professional, we'll be looking for here is to review the supporting material provided to verify whether initiatives qualify as innovative points.
Okay. Thank you to Corinne and Ray for this month's episode, and thank you to everyone who joined today. Our next webinar in the series coming next month will be on the custodial and waste focus areas. I'm also excited to announce a new BOMA Best Award, the BOMA Best Spotlight Award. This award aims to showcase and acknowledge innovative achievements in sustainability within the BOMA Best Sustainability Program. By highlighting innovative approaches, this award aims to inspire others to adopt similar strategies, ultimately contributing to a more sustainably built environment. And so if your building has a unique sustainability journey or initiative that you would like to share, consider applying for this award. This award will be awarded at BOMEX 2024 in Vancouver, and details on eligibility requirements can be found on the BOMA Canada Awards page. For those of you who had questions during registration, we will be updating our FAQ page on our website, or we'll be responding to you directly. Thank you and have a great day.